Hi, I'm Dave Brannon, disability lawyer. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the onset date for CPP disability claims. This is the onset date for when your disability starts, according to CPP Disability. Now, after watching this video, you'll know what the disability onset date is and why it's so important to choose the right date to make sure that your claim is approved. If you like this video, do us a favor, please hit the like button, and also leave comments if you'd like something clarified or would like to add something to the conversation. We watch the comments and we'll make sure that we respond. That helps both you and also future people who are watching the video. Also, remember to hit subscribe and the bell notification button so you'll continue to get our videos in the future. One of the most common mistakes we see with CPP disability claims is that people or their representatives choose the wrong disability onset date. Now, the disability onset date is an important concept for CPP disability claims. Essentially, what it means is it's the date when you are determined that you can no longer perform work on a substantially gainful regular basis. Now, there's a lot of confusion about how to pick this date. There's a question in the CPP application that asks, what was the last day of work? Or what was your last day of work? Often, people will just put the very last day that they were actually on the job site before they stopped completely. Now, in many cases, that may be your disability onset date. If you don't give any further explanation, often that's the date that Service Canada will use. You have to think about it and wonder, is that the right date that we should be using? Generally speaking, for a person making a claim, the earlier or further back you go with your disability onset date, the better for you. For one, it will mean that you'll get a bigger back payment if you're approved. So moving your disability onset date back a few months can result in a few more months of payments in some cases than if you had just chosen a date further ahead. CPP disability is not available to everyone. It's not even available to everyone who is paid into CPP disability. It's only available to people who have made sufficient recent contributions. And what happens is there is a thing called a minimum qualifying period, and that is the period of time, the most recent period of time that a person has that they were covered for CPP disability. You have to be careful when choosing an onset date to make sure that it fits somewhere within the minimum qualifying period. So you have to be careful not to push it out the back end of the minimum qualifying period in some cases. But the more common mistake is people choose a date that is outside of the minimum qualifying period by being more recent. I just had a lawyer call me 2 days ago, actually, with a question. They were new to doing CPP disability, and one of the things they were asking is, well, wouldn't it be better if we focused the onset date being more recent because there's all these other new medical problems and they're much more serious than the older problems? And I said, well, that's a very dangerous thing. When did the minimum qualifying period end? And the lawyer didn't know. I said, well, first thing with doing this is you need to know when that minimum qualifying period ends. So it turned out that the minimum qualifying period was years before when these new medical things happened. So had that lawyer gone ahead with the client and claimed the onset period being with these new conditions that started, it would have been an automatic denial because the onset date fell outside of the minimum qualifying period. You have to make sure you choose the correct date. There's some advantage to you choosing a date that's earlier because you'll get more payments, but in all cases, you have to make sure the payment falls within the minimum qualifying period window. Sometimes the onset date can be very clear. You were in a traumatic accident, you had a stroke, a heart attack, some type of event where it's well documented and the day before you were fine and that's the day that this thing happened. That's an easy point where it's pretty much sometimes hard to argue an onset date, as long as the severe symptoms started immediately. The more difficult situation is when you have either an event that does not result in an immediate severe situation or a chronic condition that gradually gets worse over time. There is some gray area where you can kind of make arguments about where that date should be. And that's where lawyers are very good with arguing the gray areas of why it should be here and why it should be there. Sometimes, again, that's critical because you need to kind of push it as far ahead as possible to make sure that it's in the minimum qualifying period, or more likely you have to push it far enough back to make sure that it's in the qualifying period. What are some of the things that help you move this date around? The last day of work is not always the best indicator, because it could be easily a situation where the person has actually been struggling at work for 6 months. Maybe they took 2 weeks off, they went back, they worked a few days, they took another sick day, they took more time, they went back. There could be this on and off of work, a lot of sick days, and when you're showing up to work, you're not really able to do the work. Coworkers are helping you, there's been accommodations. So you have to really think back and think, okay, they're asking for what my last day of work was. So you can be clear with that you can either go with the last day you actually were working, and you can say this is the last day I set foot in the office, or you can clarify that, yeah, the last day I set foot in the office was, say, in December, but I really stopped being able to do my duties back in, say, July. And over that period, I was on and off of work, I took time off, I took some vacation time to try to get better, I was showing up, it was sporadic, I was getting help. So in that type of situation, you could easily push that disability onset date back to July, when the person was still employed and still technically showing up to work, even though sporadically. So there you have it. Now you know what is the disability onset date for CPP disability. And you also know the importance of making sure that your disability onset date falls within your minimum qualifying period window. You know that it's to your advantage to push the date back as far as possible, as long as you still remain in that window, because it will usually and often will result in you getting more back pay. I will tell you that one of the most common mistakes made by people who are representing themselves or by inexperienced representatives, lawyers, and advocates is not really understanding the importance of this disability onset date and building a case around an onset date that falls outside of the window is one of the biggest mistakes that can happen. That's very hard to fix down the road, depending on how the evidence and case has been presented and constructed. So it's one of the things you want to know right out of the gate, because your whole strategy should flow and follow around when is this disability onset date. So if you like the video, please do us a favor and hit the like button. Also, we'd love to get your comments. Comments help you because we can clarify things in the video, but they also help other people who will watch the video in the future and may have the same questions or concerns as you. Now, to keep getting our videos in the future, hit the subscribe button and also the bell notification so that you get a notice every time we put out a video. To learn more about CPP disability, keep watching our videos, and we look forward to seeing you next time.